What's up guys, welcome to another range day. Today we're going to be shooting my 9mm Kriss Vector SBR. Guys, if you enjoy the content that I'm making, then please make sure to like and subscribe and leave me a message down in the comments section. I hate asking, but it really does help the algorithm a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. And if you ring the bell icon, you should get notifications when new videos are released as well. Additionally, if you want more Chester's Hobbies content, you can follow me on Instagram where you can see what I'm working on and get previews of upcoming videos. And I'm also pretty active on Reddit if you'd like to follow along with the conversations there. Alright, well that's enough of that, so back to the gun of the day, my Kriss Vector SBR. Now the Kriss Vector is a really interesting and unique design with a modern and iconic silhouette that just about anyone who's played a first-person shooter game or watched a lot of action movies in the past 15 years would probably recognize. It's actually featured in the latest Call of Duty game as the Fennec 45 as well. It has a very futuristic, science fiction, space gun kind of look that really makes it stand out in the crowd. It was originally designed for full auto fire and chambered in 45 ACP. The full auto version has an insanely high cyclic rate, but the innovation of the Vector recoil system actually has the bolt cycling downward inside the lower receiver instead of straight back, which helps pull the muzzle back on target after every shot fired. It's a really interesting design and it's extremely effective in a full auto platform. And this one is unfortunately not full auto, and it's actually not 45 ACP either. My Kriss Vector is chambered in 9mm, which is my favorite caliber to shoot because it's relatively inexpensive, suppresses well, and can be shot up close at steel pretty quickly due to the relatively low velocity and recoil impulse. Over the years, the Vector has been offered in a total of 5 calibers: the original 45 ACP, then 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 10mm, and the most recently a 22 LR version. All versions of the Vector accept Glock magazines appropriate to the caliber they're chambered in, with the exception of the 22 LR version that uses Glock-style magazines made by Kriss. So this is the second Pistol Caliber Carbine that I ever purchased, all the way back in 2017. It was actually the very first Braced pistol that I ever purchased as well. My first PCC that I purchased was a CZ Scorpion 16-inch rifle with a faux suppressor, and it really hooked me on the concept of a Pistol Caliber Carbine almost immediately. So I started doing more research into available options on the market. When I realized that it was possible for me to own one of the coolest and most unique modern firearms I'd ever used in a video game, I knew I had to have one. Now, perception and reality can often be very different things, and I have to say my experience with the Kriss Vector over the past 5 years has led me to have kind of a love-hate relationship with this gun. It's an extremely flat-shooting gun with a unique recoil impulse that's almost shocking to experience the first time I go back to shooting it after having not shot it for any length of time. The Vector recoil system is really probably overkill for semi-auto, but it's still definitely effective and a ton of fun to run. But for all the innovation that went into the Kriss Vector, there are a lot of quirks, particularly when looking at the manual of arms. When you purchase the Vector in a pistol format, you're legally not allowed to put a vertical foregrip on it, which is interesting because the gun was originally designed to have a vertical foregrip, so that can actually create some unexpected issues. I didn't file the Form 1 to SBR this gun until 2019, so I shot as a braced pistol for a couple of years. Now, it worked great for me for the most part, but I found that it was pretty common that anyone I handed the gun to try it out would end up inducing a malfunction, even if it had been running great for me all day. This is mainly because the front of the lower receiver here is an extremely comfortable place to grip. It almost feels like a vertical grip actually, but if you look closely, there are 2 sets of critical controls here that can cause inadvertent malfunctions. So the first one is the magazine release button, which is right in the middle of this area that people like to use as a grip, so if you accidentally depress that button while shooting, you might just drop the magazine on the ground mid-string. Now the second one that's been more common in my experience is the bolt catch and bolt release buttons above. It's very common for people to accidentally depress these buttons with their thumb or hand while shooting, and that can create failures to eject or feed, or even just lock the bolt back unexpectedly. Now these are quirks that can be worked around with training, but honestly, even after owning this gun for 5 years, I still don't find the controls to be very intuitive personally. One thing that I do like is that it's really easy to pull the charging handle back and then lock the bolt back with one hand, which is a neat feature, and the non-reciprocating folding charging handle is a nice touch, particularly because when you unfold it, it functions as a press check to see if a round is in the chamber, which is really interesting. Beyond that, the controls are just kind of in odd locations that tend to get in the way of the general operation of the firearm, which is odd again because like I said before, the original Vector was designed to be shot with a vertical foregrip, so if you do have one installed like I do here, that does virtually eliminate the chances of accidental button presses of the magazine or bolt catch. But then when you think about it, the locations of these buttons really still aren't very ergonomic, particularly because if you're right-handed, there's no button to press to release the magazine on the right side, and the magazine release button is somewhat recessed in the lower receiver as opposed to something like a paddle mag release on MP5. It's just not very ergonomic or intuitive in my opinion. The ambidextrous safety is pretty decent, but it doesn't have a positive click, and it's also positioned oddly high up, which makes it a little challenging to actuate without breaking a grip. So the gun is pretty bizarre and quirky overall, but in a way that's part of the charm of a unique gun like the Vector. Another thing worth noting is this is the heaviest PCC that I currently own, coming in at almost exactly 8 pounds as you see it here. So that makes it 1.5 pounds heavier than my CZ Scorpion, 2 pounds heavier than my B&T APC-9 Pro, and 1 pound heavier than my full-size MP5. That said, I still think it balances fairly well, and it's definitely got a very unique and interesting feel that's a lot of fun on the range. At the end of the day, I'm honestly fine with the quirks, and I love the gun despite its flaws, but my love for it did start to falter a little bit when I started getting consistent failures to eject even when the manual of arms was being properly utilized. I contacted Kriss USA's warranty department, and they were nice enough to take the gun in under warranty as a courtesy, even though it was technically outside of the covered warranty period, so I really appreciated that. They ended up replacing the bolts and ejector assemblies, and since coming back from repair, it's been running much better for me. But the last time I had it out, it started having some failures again, so I'll be very interested to see how it goes today. So in my experience, I found that this gun really needs to be well lubricated to run smoothly. It's not like a lot of my other guns where I can just grab it and bring it out to the range without worrying about it. It really likes to be run wet. Something that I'm trying today that I read about online is that some people actually recommend lubricating the action rails with grease. So I'm trying that, and hopefully that'll keep things running smoothly today. And one of the big things that I love about 9mm pistol caliber carbines is suppressing them. The design of the Vector lends itself very well to suppression with minimal or no gas blowback, which is very enticing on its own. Now originally I just direct threaded my suppressors with this gun and had no issues at all, but ever since installing a tri-lug adapter like I use on the rest of my pistol caliber carbines, I've had a lot of issues with accuracy, which is kind of a bummer because I love the HK tri-lug system. Now for today, I'm going to be testing out my brand new Silencer Co. Omega 9K, which I think will be a great fit for this gun because it's nice and light and shouldn't disrupt the balance of the gun. And when I checked it out with an alignment rod, it appeared to be dead center, so hopefully I won't have any issues with it today. Now as I mentioned before, this Vector was originally purchased as a braced pistol, my first in fact. Came with a really ugly but relatively effective SB Tactical fixed brace, but it was a bit of an eyesore on an otherwise awesome looking space gun in my opinion. Now I decided to SBR this gun. I was initially really excited because I wanted to get the iconic offset folding stock that was originally released with this gun when it was first designed. Unfortunately, Kriss has had some rolling changes to the Vector over the years, and I happened to get a Gen 2.1 2017 edition that changed the stock mounting design so the original hinge stock was not compatible. Fortunately, I was able to pick up this new style folding stock that works with this gun and also works with the latest generations available today as far as I understand. I was disappointed at first, but I have to admit it's kind of grown on me. The fit and function of the stock is very good. It gives me a decent cheek well for this absolute co-witness height optic setup. It's pretty comfortable and it adds a QD sling point to the gun, which works well with my Savvy Sniper sling. Now, apparently enough people complain about the change that they now offer a new upper receiver that allows a Gen 2.1 gun to use that original folding stock. I only recently found out about that and it seems pretty cool, but it's a little expensive. I'll give it some thought and maybe it's something I'll do at some point, but for now I'm honestly pretty happy with this current configuration. Now, adding a vertical grip to this gun really changes the game in terms of both feel and function because as previously mentioned, the original gun was designed around having a vertical foregrip, so the controls are a lot easier to work around when you're not gripping the mag well. Now I typically like a thumb over bore style grip with my rifles, but the height over bore is really high on the Vector, which makes that pretty difficult to do. So originally I had one of my favorite vertical grips, the BCM vertical grip that you see here installed on my Vector, and it did allow me to get a decently comfortable thumb over bore grip even though it was a bit of a stretch. However, I recently picked up this Kriss USA vertical grip that looks fantastic on the gun. It takes up the entire bottom rail and matches the aesthetics perfectly. Now I do think it looks great, but function-wise it definitely has a different feel and increases the distance that I would have to travel for a thumb over bore grip. But when dry firing, I was feeling pretty comfortable to put my thumb on top of the charging handle, but I'm not sure if that might end up inducing malfunctions. So it'll be fun to see how this grip feels today. I'm really looking forward to trying it. Now other than the stock and the vertical foregrip, the only other thing that I added to this gun was the Holosun 510C red dot, which I like a lot. It's got a nice big viewing window and the Magpul M-Bus backup iron sights that came with the Vector co-witness with it perfectly. So that's what we got going on for today, guys. It's been quite a while since I shot this gun, so I'm really excited to see how it runs today. Let's hit the range and see how my Kriss Vector SBR performs. Guys, I want to give you an idea of what the Vector sounds like, both unsuppressed with supersonic ammo as well as suppressed with good subsonic ammo. So I'm going to start off by firing 2 supersonic rounds unsuppressed, slow fire into the dirt, and then I'm going to attach my Dead Air Wolfman in its short configuration and fire 2 more rounds with subsonic ammunition, again slow fire into the dirt. So let's start with the unsuppressed shots. Okay. Suppressed. Alright guys, listen, I know I had a lot of criticisms of the Vector during the intro. It had been a little bit over a year since I'd actually shot my Vector, and I gotta say, honestly, this thing is a ton of fun to shoot. The recoil impulse is incredibly unique. It's a lot different from any of the other PCCs that I have. Because of the Vector recoil system, the bolt actually travels down and then back up again, but it does it very, very quickly. So the result under rapid fire is sort of a rocking up and down kind of feel, but it's happening so fast that it's barely noticeable. And what I actually noticed is that the sights really just didn't move at all. This might honestly be one of the flattest shooting PCCs that I have. Now I do emphasize flattest shooting and not softest shooting. And what I mean by that is that it's flat shooting insofar as the sights barely move at all when you're shooting in rapid fire on your target. But because it is technically a direct blowback system, there is a little bit more felt recoil in the cheek and the shoulder than say an MP5 or a CMMG Banshee with some sort of delayed blowback mechanism. But then again, because the inertia of the bolt isn't traveling directly into your shoulder, it's actually going down and then back up, it's really still incredibly soft shooting. It's just a very different kind of violent impulse. I guess it's hard to explain, but ultimately I would say it's simultaneously very pleasant to shoot and also very visceral and violent feeling. And I know those terms are kind of at odds with each other, but that's really how it kind of feels, honestly. But I will say that the recoil impulse gets even softer when shooting it suppressed. You may notice that I didn't end up using the Omega 9K on here. Even at just 10 yards, the 8-inch plates couldn't be hit with the Omega 9K on, unfortunately, which really lines up with a lot of the problems I've had with the accuracy when using a tri-lug on this system. But I am happy to say that the Dead Air Wolfman in short configuration worked great for me. I had no issues with accuracy at all, and it was super, super quiet. Unlike some guns like an AR-9 or an MPX, there's really nowhere for the gas to escape and get into your face. The ejection port is so far forward on this gun, it's much different from many other 9mm PCC platforms, and as a result, this gun is a fantastic suppressor host. I would say it's probably not as quiet as an MP5 or a CMMG Banshee or maybe even an MPX, because again, it is still direct blowback at heart, and there's no delay in the reciprocation of the bolt, so there's still a little bit of port pop, but to my ears, it sounds fantastic. All right, so let's talk about some of the criticisms that I had during the intro. I still think that the manual of arms is very much an oddity when it comes to the Vector, but after 275 rounds, I was really getting used to it, and honestly, I think if you train with it consistently, you'll probably be able to get pretty proficient with it. The new vertical grip that I got from Kriss USA works great and keeps my hands away from the controls that could induce a malfunction. The charging handle design is clever and perfectly effective. The bolt catch and bolt release seem to make sense the more you use them, and the mag release is, well, okay, so the mag release is still something that I have a little bit of a qualm with. Again, it's still very much recessed on the lower receiver, which makes it difficult to actuate when you're in a hurry or if you're under stress. The magazines do drop free if the gun is completely vertical, but if you tilt the gun too much to the sides, the magazines might not fall free for you. As far as ways they could potentially improve on the design, I'm definitely not a design engineer, but some sort of paddle mag release like an MP5 down here at the base of the receiver could make reloads a lot quicker. But then I also realized that would mess up the ergonomics of the flush fit magazine, so I understand why they wouldn't do that. So I think ultimately the best thing would be some sort of extended mag release that sticks out a little bit from the receiver. It does actually appear to be removable, so I'll have to look into it. Maybe someone actually makes one. I personally think that could be a huge improvement. The ambidextrous safety is fine. It's a little bit mushy, and again, as I mentioned before, it's pretty high up, so it's kind of difficult to actuate without breaking your grip. It's not a huge deal. It does work, but that's just something worth noting. Now, I will say one thing that I wasn't expecting is the trigger took a lot of getting used to today. It's a pretty mushy rolling brake that's not super heavy, but the reset is a little bit on the long side, and I found that made it a little bit difficult to run quickly for me today. It's also possible that that's a me situation and more of a training issue, because I've been using a lot of really quick triggers lately, and so I think that's why I had issues up front. But as the day went on, I did feel that I was getting a little bit quicker with it, so it's probably mostly a training issue more than anything. I think the texture and grip angle of the pistol grip are great. I have no issues at all there, and it's got a storage compartment underneath for my tack stamp as well. This is easily the most I've shot this gun since I converted to an SBR, and I gotta say, I actually love this stock. It folds and locks up nice and easy with the push of a button. The length of pull is adjustable, and the QD sling point worked pretty well for me. I say pretty well because it is a little bit far back on the gun. I kind of wish the QD point was at the receiver end of the stock as opposed to the butt end of the stock, but when I shortened my single point Savvy Sniper sling a little bit, it really wasn't that bad. I really enjoyed the Holosun 510C today. It's got a nice big viewing window and the option of using both a circle dot and a red dot. I've mainly been sticking with red dots lately, but I went with the circle dot today and I really enjoyed it. I think that's really cool to have that option in these optics. I ended up shooting 275 rounds today, which is a lot more than I planned on doing, but I was having a ton of fun. And I have to say, a big reason I was having that much fun is this is the first time I've shot it this much since coming back from Kriss USA warranty repair, and I'm extremely happy to report I had 0 failures in 275 rounds fired. For most guns, that would be completely normal and expected, but for this gun, in my opinion, it's phenomenal. I was really excited that it performed that well for me today. So I gotta say, I'm really glad I tried the grease on the action. Maybe that was what did it. I can't tell you how much more fun this gun is when it's not having issues. I really don't want to over-exaggerate the issues that I had. My failure rate at the height of the problems I was having was probably around 2 to 3%, so it wasn't anything like some of the worst guns that I've had, but it was just enough to be annoying and kind of take you out of the experience a little bit. But using the grease on the rails really seemed to make a huge difference, and I'm ecstatic about it. So yeah, guys, that's the Kriss Vector. In my opinion, it's one of the coolest looking and most innovative guns made in the past 2 decades. It's got a lot of quirks. I definitely don't think it's the most practical firearm, especially for something like home defense or any kind of serious duty use, and particularly in semi-auto. But there's simply no denying that this is a really cool piece of modern firearms history, and I'm really glad that I have it. And honestly, it's just extremely fun to shoot. From the flat and relatively soft shooting recoil impulse, to the interesting manual of arms, and the really chunky center balanced weight that almost feels like you're running around with a relatively ergonomic cinder block. It's just a really interesting, unique, and fun experience. So I absolutely love shooting, and I can't wait to get it out again soon. So that's going to be all for today, guys. We got a lot more videos coming up soon, including more PCCs, ARs, AKs, handguns, and shotguns. So remember to like and subscribe, ring the bell, stay tuned, and thanks for stopping by.